All right, we'll call council time to order, October 16th. It is 1 p.m. We'll start with the councilor roll call.
Counselor Young,
Here.
Counselor Belcott,
Present.
Counselor Bowerman,
Present.
Chair Medvigi,
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Present.
and Counselor Marshall.
Here.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry about the remote not working. I'm sure it's my laptop, which I forgot to bring in to get fixed, but I promise I'll get it fixed. Okay, any amendments to the agenda?
Yes, I have two. The first one is removing item 9.3 under executive session and then add 4.4 law and justice impacts.
Okay, any objection to those amendments? And we're calling that law and justice impacts? Okay. As 4.4. All right, moving on to public comment on agenda items only.
And
Any in the room signed up?
Carmen DeLeon, do you want to step to the podium?
My name is Carmen DeLeon, and I was looking about the minutes from the 9th that they talked about, and they invested millions of dollars. They had all these kind of microphones set up, and yet it took him 16 minutes to be able to get on and listen. In the 20th minute, I was just mumbling and in and out, in and out. So this stuff ain't working. They put all this money into it, and not even they can fix it. And when I went to go look at the minutes, like I said, I got mumble, mumble, mumble. Their speakers aren't working, so more money wasted because nothing's been fixed. The other thing I was talking about, or they were talking about on the 9th, was the Humane Society. And that gets me, because my heart goes out to the animals too, but humans are worth more. And we have a Humane Society that if I call up, they come run and get the dog, or they come and get the broken bird that crashed and they go heal him up. But when a human is on the street, I cannot call the Humane Society. The inhumane society we have, not helping the homeless, is squandering their money. Another thing before I get in some kind of trouble, let me see on, that's going to be another meeting. So, and then later on today, they're going to have private counsel on the WAC 42.30.110, and it's all secretive. Why are they going into constant litigation and being, I guess, sued, and yet not wanting to tell us? I don't think that's fair. I think if they've committed crimes, they need to be held accountable for every dime that's been misplaced, especially the one in charge, because when a ship sinks, you don't come after the first mate, you come after the captain. So that's the one in charge of sinking the ship, of losing all the money, and should not be allowed to retire without being held accountable for crimes committed misusing the public's funds. And, Oh, I thought somebody said something to me. Let me see. Oh, and then there was also the thing about, Kimberly and free speech and all of this, and I don't think anything was meant as a threat. I really just think I think as a United States citizen, people should say, thank you for speaking up. And actually, I've told people what I've done here, and they say, thank you for speaking up for us, because we don't have the time to do it. So instead of thanking the community who cares, we get belittled, we get insulted, we get threatened with arrest. And that's just entirely psychotic, because instead of saying, thank you, man, for coming and sharing your concerns for the public, instead it's like, I didn't like what you said, so, go to jail. So we got a pretty messed up communication system here. It's not a joke. People's livelihoods are at stake. Like I said about the Humane Society, the inhumane society that we have, that I can't call up and say, hey, there's a person who's sick on the street, go pick them up, give them a place to stay.
Okay, that concludes your time. Thank you. And for clarification, the executive sessions are not always on lawsuits. There's a lot of different reasons, from internal human resources discussion, property discussions. They're not, you wrongly assume that they're about lawsuits that we're being sued. So thank you for your comment. Are there others in the room?
I don't have anybody else signed up in the
Okay,
room.
online?
I have Mo McKenna. You've been asked to be unmuted. Please go ahead with your comment.
And my name is Mo McKenna. I run a small farm here in Clark County. My last name is spelled McKenna. I also have the pleasure to just know and get to collaborate with so many farmers across our county, growing and producing all sorts of wonderful things for our local market. And I just hope that you have had an outpouring of support for the creation of an agricultural advisory committee. I think the staff has done awesome work on creating something really balanced, and we are just excited to move this to the next step and thank the council in advance for all of your support. Thanks.
And next caller, Jude, you've asked to be unmuted. Please state your entire name for the record and go ahead with your comment.
Go ahead, caller, if you're hearing us.
My name is Jude Waite. I hold a PhD based on my research and 13 years of direct involvement with the agricultural food system of Clark County. I thank you very much for establishing an agricultural advisory commission essential to ensuring resilient agroecosystems. We are making up for lost time given rapid urbanization, lack of coordinated or funded support systems, and a very high rate of turnover in the farming community. We need to support farmers' economic viability, honor their ability to be stewards of our natural resources, including soil, water, air, and biodiversity, and farming can mitigate adverse effects. Agriculture is the foundation of community well-being, with healthy food access being a human right. A wide diversity of Clark County residents participate in food production agriculture, from their yards to their kitchens, from farms to food pantries, and from greenhouses to markets. We need to be very inclusive in consideration of our lands of agricultural significance because there's a lot of raised farms, raised beds, so we can't just bank on our soil maps. Across all zoning and land use designations, farming in the city, market gardens in rural areas, community gardens are hubs of microfarming. Please also expand the membership and be diverse and inclusive. For example, the Environmental Justice Coalition, 15 groups now working on the climate element of the growth management plan, including Farm and Food Justice Network, farm worker community. Labor is a huge issue. Healthcare community who understand that food is medicine. Education and farm to school programs. Food assistance and farmer training programs. You have legacy lands listed, but you also have transfer of development rights within your purview. Supporting both farmer retention and smart development going hand in hand, and doing that transfer trade is essential. Funding is essential. So you have county staff. What about the agencies that need to be at the table, the conservation district and extension? What about the other participants, the farmers and the food system people who don't necessarily have the ability to afford that opportunity cost because the crops need to be harvested right now? So we look forward to ongoing opportunities to support and engage with the Agricultural Advisory Commission and associated initiatives. And I think we could leverage a lot of money for our community to support the farming community that we have here. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. And I believe that concludes public comment then. We'll move on to old business 4.1, the minutes of 9 October.
I have a small change and then I'll move approval. I think this is just omission of a couple of words perhaps, but I had difficulty understanding the meaning. The last bullet under meeting scheduled, where it starts with December 4 as a placeholder in the event they, and add the words, need it to get all the way through. And I would add the words, the agenda. With those simple little wording changes, which does not change the meaning per se, I don't believe I would move approval.
Thank you for that. I'll second that amendment. Any further
No.
amendments or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. 4.2, third quarter update.
Hello. Oh, okay. Now there we go. Mitchell Kelly, reporting and analysis manager in the auditor's office, here with Mark Gasway, finance director. We're pleased to present the third quarter update of our financial status of the county. In this first section, we are tracking the revenues and comparing them to the prior year third quarter. As you can note, property tax is slightly increased and sales tax is on target with our projections as far as our growth year over year. Continuing down this to the expenses, this graph looks at the budget to actual expenses through the third quarter. And on the side, you can see the balance of the budget remaining. As you can note, the salaries and benefits are both very tight. It's about a quarter left, which is about what we would expect for the fourth quarter. So we've spent up to a third of what our budgeted expenses are for salaries and benefits. The other supplies and services occur. Sometimes there's year-end expenses that accumulate at the end of the year. So that's also pretty much on target as far as what we were expecting to see for the general fund expenses. Are there any questions about either of these two sections?
Great work, great management. It's nice to see these clean charts. I do have a question though, because in past annual reports where we've seen some very consistent property tax, very consistent sales tax, and growth in that, the other revenue had been declining. And when I had posed the question, what are all those other revenues? There was a bunch of them. But I'm seeing from this chart that we're actually doing better or okay, on track with those other revenues. So I know it's an accumulation of, I don't know how many line items, but are there some that are doing really poorly that need addressing? Are there some that we've gotten caught up because of our mantra for full cost reimbursement across different departments? Where are we at on the other resource category?
I could definitely get more information to you. I'd say just overall, we're collecting more of our revenue that we had outstanding. But for more detail, I could definitely get that information.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
Just to add to that, I like your characterization of it being okay. We don't have any significant changes to what we expected right now. So those other revenues, as we watch them throughout the year, if we know of changes, I would say the major benefit that we have right now in our other revenue is in our interest earnings, because they have grown I think this year they may be kind of peaking out because of the interest rates are going to start to decline. But because of our interest earnings that are included in other revenues, I think we're where we expected to be. So we don't have any major loss of those other revenues or declines or increases as well. So.
Okay, other questions by council? Michelle, Karen?
No.
Okay. Okay, well, thanks for that report. Oh, yes.
Just continuing.
We have
We're going
more-
to finish the report.
More pages.
Sorry. Well, continuing down, just public safety sales tax, that's also something of note, unique to our council and the directives that we've been asked to track. The revenue is right on target. We're about a quarter of the revenue left that we need to collect over for this fiscal year. And then our expenses are also tracking that there's about a little more than a quarter of the expenses left to spend. The other side of this, a quarterly report, we track the expenses and revenues to budget for the road fund. And we would expect that's exactly what we would expect for revenue to be collected. Property tax is a major revenue source of road fund, and that revenue is going to hit again this month in October. And then the expenses are also something that is pretty reasonable for road funds at this time of year. The last two sections are the community development. Every year, the general fund transfers money to community development to cover the costs of some of these services that are provided. And through the third quarter, we estimate that we would transfer $900,000, which is, if you add the next quarter, would be a total of $1.2 million. That's exactly that's very similar to what we normally transfer. So we're right on target as far as what we have done consistent in prior years.
And I was going to say, and I know council has just had a work session with land use review and working on it, and they're considering a different fee structure. And so that is to help reduce this transfer out of the general fund for those services. So
You were anticipated my question. I would just notice that the land use review and the wetland habitat review are in the negative, and that's related to the need for changing those rates to get them in the positive.
well, what it would do is because they show that in the negative here in this fund because we have to transfer in general fund to subsidize that. Does that make sense? Their expenses exceed the revenues within their fund. Okay.
Right.
So when they adjust the rates, hopefully the revenues will help offset the deficit, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. Thank you.
And finally, just a tracking of the American Rescue Plan grants and awards that have been granted to the different projects. I know that there's going to be some activity in the month of October with a couple of these programs, but all of the money related to the American Rescue Plan has been committed. And that's the total quarterly report. Are there any questions about anything on that report?
Glenn, you had some questions.
Yeah, just the most recent one, community development. So I can see where those are negative, which represents a transfer from the general fund. So the other ones that are positive, does that mean that there is a surplus at all? Meaning we've collected more revenue than we've spent, or is it right on target, or what does that mean? I mean, it shows that there's no transfer from the general fund, but what exactly does that mean?
So the other activities within community development, they are more business-like activities. For example, the building piece of it, and the building fees fully support all of the expenses that they're incurring. And they also accrue a fund balance because if you recall, those are permits that are issued that have to be completed in the future. So we have to have the funds available. In the example is if we shut down today, we still have work to do. And so that's what that represents. That's what that balance represents. What work do we have to do in the future to complete the permits that we've already issued? And the same with development engineering. They also have a fee structure that allows them to work on projects that are 6 to 12 months long, right? They collect the fees up front and then they're continuing to do that work. So that's why you see positive balances in those two categories.
Okay, and then is there a trend on this, like from quarter to quarter? Is it increasing? Is it decreasing, staying the same?
Actually, I guess the good news story is they've been very consistent over the last few years, both the building side and the development engineering. And so, you know, we used to see them fluctuating a lot, and it's been very consistent. We, in the monthly report that we also do, we show like the cash balances for these funds. And if you were to go back, you know, trending over the last 2 to 3 years, it's a very consistent story, which is great. So,
All right.
and I think it bodes well to how their fees are being addressed more frequently.
All right, thank you.
Other questions?
I have a question.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. On the ARPA funds, the facilities planning, I'm wondering what the timeline might be for spending that because it's a large remaining balance.
Sure. And this is also connected to today's very successful bond issuance, because we will be moving some of the commitments that we've made for some of these projects through ARPA and be paying that with the bond proceeds. And then this will actually, we have the ability to use a tool called revenue recovery. And so the general fund will actually benefit from substituting that financing for ARPA funding. So that will actually show up in the general fund.
And that would be the 26.4?
No, not all of it.
Oh,
We only did,
some
remember,
portion of it.
yeah, remember we only did 16 million in projects out of the ARPA fund.
Only 16 million.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
So I have a couple of comments and you / questions that
Okay.
you could comment on my comments. So first of all, going back to the road fund, I just want to caution the counselors, especially those going on to the next year. So when I first became a counselor and for the first few years, and I see our public works director is here as well, we were shown the 6-year forecast for our road fund. And my best recollection is each of those forecasts every year showed pretty much an annual declining balance where it just was a pretty steep drop off where we were down to zero. So I'm heartened to see that we have almost $24 million in our road fund. So here's the weird analogy I'm going to give you. You know, over time, all these experts have evaluated the Battle of Gettysburg. You know, what were the lost opportunity during those several days of battle for the Confederacy to have turned the tide and actually successfully completed the Battle of Gettysburg and then taken Washington, D.C. They looked at every single opportunity of where things could have gone differently, decisions made on the battlefield. My question is, what did we do differently? Because I remember no different path other than the forecast completely turned around.
I
And
think,
now we're looking pretty darn healthy on our road fund. I know if you showed me another 6-year forecast, you'd probably seen it. We'd see it drawn down to zero again. But I see, Ken, you're standing up. Please comment.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. If you don't mind, I would like to answer that. I can say that in my almost 2 years as tenure as the director, we've done quite a bit of work with the forecasts and the details so that we can really understand what's going on with the revenue and expenditure sides. And I can say with quite a bit of confidence that we feel we understand the levers and dials quite a bit better. And when we schedule things out 6 years, there's quite a bit of variance in how that end of the fund looks, whether we're scheduling, a large project or pulling it forward or pushing it out, that can have a big effect on the ending fund balance. But the balance that you're seeing right now is highly related to us having dollars that are programmed for 179th corridor and the future work that needs to happen. But I am happy to say I feel confident that we kind of know what we're doing and we have the dials pretty well turned now. There still is a structural deficit on the operations and maintenance side, but that also is reflected on how we move our dollars into capital programming and how that affects our salaries year over year. So it's better, and I think we understand it better. So, and I appreciate your notes on the ever declining nature of it. I don't feel that's the position that we're in. So.
Super, thanks. So just,
And Chair,
okay,
if I
go
could
ahead.
just second what Ken has said, because over the last couple of years, they have done a lot of work. And, with being with financial services, we've consulted with them and worked with them, and they have really put some time into that 6-year forecast, syncing that 6-year forecast up with the TIP plan. Some of the things that in the past, maybe when you started, we weren't quite doing. So I really appreciate all the work that the finance staff in Public Works has done to kind of sync those things together so that we can, have a better picture of what it looks like. So.
Super. Thank you. So the only other comment I wanted to make, and again, really directed towards the other counselors who are going to be moving forward in this, when we looked at these ARPA funds, it was a godsend. And we tried to think of ways that we could have every dollar last off into the future. And one of those big needs we had was our jail. We had a task force go for a whole year, different bed estimates from 800 to 1,000 with huge price tag on building a monolithic, perfect, nationally recognized jail. And everyone gagged on it and it never made any progress. So then we started taking little chunks at it. What's practical? What can we remodel? What small additions can we do? How do we modularize this and phase this over time so that it is practical? And the ARPA funds, we were hoping within our means to get design work done, to do some of those capital improvements that we needed to make in the short term. My caution is that it doesn't balloon back out to many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars again. We need to keep the project practical and reasonable so that these ARPA funds are well spent and we spend within our means. I'm fully in supportive of the bonding that we intend to do in that way ahead. I think that's a very sophisticated financial approach to our capital needs. So I'm not criticizing anything. I was just, after the last briefing on the total final bill of what a new jail will look like after we're done was staggering and not exactly as I had hoped or intended when we first allocated these ARPA funds towards this project. So anyway, other questions or comments?
Yeah, just one comment. I was hoping maybe in the future, could you add one line to this? And that would just be the entire, the general fund in its entirety with the percentage change.
The general fund
Revenues.
revenues? Okay.
Yes, revenues. We have that on expenses. It'd be nice to see that with revenues as well.
Sure.
That's it. Thank you.
And I don't want to cut you short. Was there more of a presentation? that
There
you
is
wanted to
another presentation.
One other report.
do? Okay, please go ahead.
Well, we do have the monthly financial update for your review, but the other report that we would like to share with council today is called the impact fee report. So that's yes. So we receive impact fees from with a specific purpose to be used within 10 years, and they have to benefit certain areas. We track that and report on it to make sure that we're using that revenue as directed by the RCWs that we're required to follow. And so this report is in detail goes over the use of those funds in the specific areas, and the specific areas we've assigned funds within our financial reporting system to track the revenues and expenses related to those activities. The most significant section of this report is on page 7. And on page 7, it talks about the concurrency. So we have 10 years to spend this money, and where we are with spending down or assigning that money that we've collected to specific projects within the areas that should benefit from the money that was collected for those fees. And so as you can see, in 2023, we had no concerns. And in 2024, there's a little bit of money that we still would need to spend as of the time of the report at the end of the year. So working with Public Works, we're making sure that the money that we've collected to benefit those areas is being used to benefit those areas. And I just wanted to make that known to council.
Questions by council? So great work as always. Thank you so much. Last comments? Marth?
Chair,
No.
if I can make a quick comment.
Please,
The
go ahead.
ARPA conversation about the jail funds, and to Mark's point earlier about the bond creation, using that intentionally with the jail work center. I think we've done a really good job taking off bites with the money that was allocated with ARPA for the work center project, for the pre-design for the jail, and for what that future is going to look like. And I think the totality of the jail project, which we'll talk about in months coming, will be much more substantial than what we could have ever done with ARPA funding that we had, and what we have used it for. I think it's been a really great infusion in what council has approved. So I just wanted to make that point to your comment.
Good narrative. Yes.
I really don't have any other final comments. The next time we actually report to you will be after year end. And so we'll have 2024, the preliminary wrapped up. There is, the 3 months left to go in the year, so things could change. I would expect with the ARPA grant, we are looking at trying to close that out by the end of this year. So having all the expenditures that we've committed to either spent or moved over through revenue recovery into the general fund. So that's one of the intentions that we have. And I'm optimistic we can be successful in doing that. The other note that I would, continue to impress upon council is that the general fund, typically from year to year, we end up with some kind of expense savings, underspending our budget. And as Mitchell pointed out, this year it is very tight. So if there is any expense savings, if any, it will be minimal. It will not, significantly allow us to do, maybe some one-time things that we've spent that on before. That doesn't mean it's consuming our existing fund balance, but it will not help add to fund balance. So we're being very careful about, the expenses within the general fund. Most other funds aren't as constrained. As Ken said, with the road fund, it's a different situation where they're budgeting, their revenues and expenses so that they can do their projects. With the general fund, it's very tight. So
Thank you for that. And thanks for all the work you do. And I mean, my perspective is all of our funds are much, much healthier than they were years ago. I mean, the REIT fund particularly, we had to save it. And now it's on a good footing, and that we're getting good benefits. And we just had a briefing from Clean Water of how they're going to benefit by able to draw, I think it's REIT 2, where they weren't available before. So thank you for the close eye, sharp pencil, and good management. Any last comments by anyone? Otherwise, we'll move on. Thank you. We'll go to 4.3, impact fee report.
I believe that was the one that they finished up on. So that was already presented.
Okay.
And I
So
will-
we've added four, I'm sorry.
No, I just want to make sure Mark wasn't leaving. In case I
So we've added 4.4 law and justice impacts.
Okay, so so we've talked about this a couple times with the City of Vancouver's Proposition 4 going on the ballot, or is on the ballot, to add up to 80 additional police officers, a traffic camera program, and other personnel supporting that. The Sheriff's Office also has expressed their desire to add additional law enforcement personnel. And as we have talked briefly last night, as well as other meetings, the Law and Justice Council members, which include those who provide county-wide law enforcement services, which includes a Superior Court, District Court, Juvenile Court, Prosecuting Attorney, Public Defense, Clerk's Office, and the jail, all have been working together over the last 2 months to determine the impact or potential impact to their operations. I do want to state that the cost for those services right now are about $89.5 million. And the county is also covering 100% of all felony costs, which is more than 90% of those who are housed in our jail. I did put together a draft resolution, and this is just for your consideration. It's not necessarily taking a position other than saying that public safety is one of the top priorities in our community, but it's really guided to looking at data to ensure that the public who is voting on this or potential future ballot measures have all the information and the potential impacts. A couple of notes I will just call out on the draft resolution, which I think is on your screen. Unlike other large cities, Clark County District Court does serve as the municipal court for Vancouver. So that is very unusual for other large cities within the state. Again, we have I feel, and I think I've heard from the council, that we want to be as transparent as possible. I do want to say that during this process, and what we heard from our law and justice partners is nobody's ever done this. They've called their partners throughout the state. Nobody's done this type of analysis. So it is very preliminary. It will be adjusted as if something passes, we'll adjust and see and continue to evaluate. They are committed to continuing their internal discussions quarterly with each other, which is great because they've never done that before. But I did ask Mark to come up with some estimated costs based on their preliminary information. The data, that specific data, is going to be shared with council next Wednesday, which is going to show what type of FTE and what areas on all of those departments would be needed over the next, I think it was through 2032.
Yep. Next 7 years.
Yes, and they're trying to be more conservative, I think, in the first couple of years, thinking the impact would be less as it takes a while to get people hired on. And I know the proposition also has, I think, a phased-in approach. But I did, Mark did send over some, again, very preliminary numbers, may change because, you know, people are doing the best that they can at this point. The numbers were a little shocking. I just sent it to council right before this meeting, and Rebecca, if you could pull them up. And I just sent the summary of those numbers. So you can see in 2026 it's about 4.9, but if you look at 2027, we're up to 15.9 million in potential impacts, which is a 222% increase. And if you look out to 2032, it's a 39.6 million. It is a significant increase. And so I want to make sure we're not creating a bottleneck for the system that's going to fail in what Vancouver and the Sheriff's Office is trying to do, because it will fail if we don't have the capacity to account for the potential impacts. The other thing, and we'll work on this for the work session next week as well, is looking at those potential revenue streams of the levy lift, again, the public safety sales tax. I know Mark already developed a model before. We have the Sheriff's Office request and what that's going to cost, because no amount of levy lift or public safety sales tax is going to cover the full impact of this, as well as like 40 sheriff deputies. It's not, there's not enough capacity out there. So I'm hoping next week we'll have a discussion on what what would council like to see going forward for any potential February ballot measures to address any revenues and how we want to allocate that and how we want to do that. I'll put together some options for you beforehand, just for your thought process, start thinking about it. But for today's purposes, happy to answer any questions right now. And with regards to the draft resolution, is this something that council is interested in doing? If you don't, that's fine. Just want to make sure that you have that opportunity to have your voices heard so that the community can hear all the details.
I have comments, but I want to hear from the other counselors first. What's your interest in a resolution?
Mine is very strong. And the reason why I really appreciate the way this is apparently drafted is that it doesn't take a particular position, pro or con, relative to Proposition 4 of the cities, but simply explains the impacts, which I believe that voters want to know and will understand a little bit better anyway by being familiar with this resolution.
Thank you. Michelle, you're also online. Do you have comments?
I don't.
Do you support, what's your interest level for a resolution?
I do support that. Yes, I do.
Sue?
Yes, thank you. I feel a bit cautious about the resolution. And maybe it's some wording might change that for me. I agree with everything in the resolution. And I do agree that the public should be aware of all this, because I don't think the reporting currently to date has covered all of the aspects of what the impact would be. And I think that I guess as I read it, I was left hanging a bit at the end, because I would like to see at least some statement about our commitment going forward to do our best to advocate for addressing these concerns. It just seemed like it was just what's really the conclusion of this. And if there is a positive message that could be crafted, it's hard maybe to find that, because it looks a bit bleak at this point. And I think that the final statement, I think it's a little confused to me, because I think right now we're in difficulty right now. So that should be sort of clearly stated. It's not just what the city of Vancouver is proposing. But I was just writing something down here. But I think that a statement related to increasing one component, which would be Vancouver's measure, without considering all of the other components of law and justice, then I think the concluding statement, law and justice system, would not be sustainable. And it wouldn't have the positive impact, because I think that's a very good point. It doesn't have the positive impact that people are hoping for, because everything has to be considered. So I think maybe there's some language that needs to be, clarified a little bit to distinguish between what the need is now, which is great, and what this particular measure might do. Now, I don't want to cast any shade on what Vancouver is doing, but at the same time, the public should be aware of this. And I think whatever actions we're able to take to rectify the solution, maybe some statement of commitment toward that end, could make it a little more positive. Those are my thoughts. And what is the best way to inform the public? Maybe a resolution is the best way to do that. Maybe there's editorial that could be submitted to the Columbian, or maybe there's multiple avenues to really inform the public beyond just this resolution. I don't know the best strategy for that public awareness. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you. And I would, just real quick, I do want to make it clear, and I think it's said in here twice, it's currently not sustainable, our system right now. So this is going to compound this tremendously. So I'd be interested to hear a little bit more of your suggested edits on how to make this a little cleaner, but thank you.
I think that even restating it in the concluding
It's on there.
resolved.
The last sentence, the law and justice system is
Currently not.
currently not financially sustainable, and without additional funding from the communities and cities, the law and justice system will fail, resulting in limited positive impact that is desired by increased law enforcement personnel and programs.
Well, we'll get together.
Okay.
I'll
That works.
work on this.
Yeah, I think that some additional wordsmithing would be good. The one thing that I didn't see in this is, and we kind of get used to our own verbiage that we use here. And when we say, where is it here? I read it. It was without additional funding from the community and cities, we need to mention taxes on there. You know, it needs to be part. That's the only way that we're going to pay for this is additional.
Taxes are interlocal agreements from the cities as well. We can't tax the cities. But
Right,
yes,
right.
but yes, that we can massage that to say taxes. I was trying to do it a little nicer than just saying community, you're going to have to pay for this, and which is taxpayers. I could say taxpayers and cities.
That would be better.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm hearing consensus that we are interested in pursuing this with perhaps a little bit more wordsmithing. I just want to add, during all of this discussion, I mean, I was very much in favor of pushing now for a public safety sales tax increase or some other revenue mechanism for us to add to our sheriff's department now. And as we discussed that, you know, so I was in the minority on that, and where we're at today. But I think the most important part of that discussion is where we're at now. We need to be transparent with the public on how the system works. We're not, if we get 80 new patrolmen on the street, they're not paper cutouts. They're going to start writing citations, making arrests, and that impacts the PA's office directly. It then also impacts the jail directly. It then also impacts the court and the public defense. It's all related. So we need to put the total bill that we forecast in front of the public. And I think a resolution's a way to do it. But to Sue's point, every mechanism, I mean, our biggest challenge here on any subject is communicating with the public. Press release, letter to the editor, editorial, resolution. I mean, we need to amplify this. We need to hopefully have the papers online and in print report these numbers. On the other hand, I want to be really careful here because I support what Vancouver's doing. The most important thing we can do is law enforcement, public safety. And the fact that we're so far behind the nation, we're behind Washington State in per capita patrolling. And you just had this discussion, so I'll save a point for my council report. This morning on speeding, you may have seen my mouth moving without hearing actual words, but here's what I would have said. You know, you can put flashing signs out and they work a little bit. You can have crosswalks and flashing lights and they work a little bit. All of that's pretty temporal. Law enforcement, a traffic division, which we do not have right now in our sheriff's department, relates to all the complaints we get about loud mufflers, about speeding, about reckless driving, about people driving without their vehicles being registered, driving without a license, driving under the influence. All of that is public safety, and it all depends on a traffic division, which we do not have. So I'm hopeful once you address this in February, you look like, hey, we're going to increase your budget, Sheriff, but it's going to be for the creation of a motor division, a traffic division. We need more road enforcement. Because you can have a patrol car by the side of the road and it could be empty. And people are going to slow down when they see it. Unless you leave it there too long and they discover, oh, there's no one in there. Anyway, law enforcement, no law is valid unless it's enforced. So we need to make the point to the public that we support public safety. We support it in Vancouver. And if they need 80 more patrolmen, we need more judges, more prosecutors, more defense attorneys, more probation officers, more jail services, more jail space. It's all related. Without the whole package, the system will fall apart. And as you've stated, it is not sustainable as it is. So we need to get that message out there, and for whatever you decide to do next year on behalf of the sheriff and our courts and our defense and our prosecuting office.
And part of those decisions are going to happen next week.
Yeah.
Directions. So because we have to, if council wants to put something on in February, we've got to have everything teed up and by the 1st of December. So it's really important. But I think part of next week as well, we'll make sure the sheriff's office is here to, again, share what they are asking for, because I want to make sure to make sure it's in alignment with what you're supporting, because it may not be just a full traffic division. It might be allocated to other resources. And just a quick other side note, I also invited the treasurer, assessor, and auditor next week as well, because they also provide countywide services to share with council what do they see today and moving forward as well with increasing population, because as we've learned through this process, we're subsidizing countywide services for about $4.5 million. So they're going to be sharing their information as well.
Let me add my last point to what I wanted to highlight. I mean, I support the resolution, but do we want to go one step further and show a positive support for what Vancouver wants? I mean, if you ask me personally, that's what I would tell you. Yeah, we need more patrolmen in Vancouver. We need more deputies. I support that. And of course, that requires a bill to be paid in all the other entities. And we haven't even mentioned the clerk's office, boosting the number of clerks, judicial assistants, you name it. The system gets bigger necessarily. Otherwise, you get a choke point, or as we heard, potentially, we may have cases that get dismissed because we don't have enough defense attorneys. We can't allow that to happen. So anyway, that I just add that to, instead of keeping it completely neutral and just throwing numbers out there, do we actually want to take position on supporting the levy lifts for Vancouver?
Well, I have a comment.
Please,
And
go ahead.
that would be that we will be taking a position relatives to the sheriff's office for additional deputies, because that's within the county's direct budget. So we'll also be taking a position on the impacts associated with the sheriff's increase. So my concern with this particular resolution and the positions that we would take relative to Prop 4 is timeliness. Ballots going out next week, or this week, this week.
Today.
And some people beginning to vote, yay or nay already, on Prop 4 will probably be in a position of being grateful if they have additional information on the impact. So I'm just saying that timeliness is of the essence on this.
Other thoughts?
I don't think I'm prepared to support Vancouver's measure. I think let's leave it to Vancouver and the citizens of the city of Vancouver, and we'll deal with whatever comes of that. I just wanted to give a big thanks to all of the folks who represent all of the components of law and justice for coming together. I don't think this was an easy process. They couldn't get guidance from anywhere else in the state because no one else has done this. And at the same time, I believe all of the participants really found a great deal of value in going through this and would like to continue to meet quarterly. And I think just structurally, that will have a positive impact on how the system works.
Chair, if I can just add one more comment on the resolution. It doesn't say anything about capital. And I know that we've talked about that with the jail. And I had this conversation with the city earlier. No matter how many officers patrol that we support, to public safety being number one, if we have no space in the jail and there's no way for us to do any more at the work center that will have the level of felonies that we have in the jail right now. It's too level, the level's too high, maximum to do out the work center. So we've kind of done what we can for build out. So without a remodel and an expansion at our current downtown facility, that will be a huge choke point, bigger than the courts and all of those, because of the amount of booking and stuff that we are not able to do. So I just want to make sure the numbers are here, but it does not include capital.
So what I'm hearing is there's really no general support for taking a position on Prop 4 for Vancouver, but I am still hearing a general consensus to come out with a very timely resolution as ballots come out, with perhaps a bit of wordsmithing, further wordsmithing. I appreciate the effort. I think this, just talking about it, having transparency with all of Clark County, beyond the city of Vancouver voters, I think is just critical, especially as we have to move forward with anticipating the increased workload at each level. Glenn?
And could we go back to the last slide? I was going to ask for some clarification on that. The numbers that are in that chart, are those cumulative? Sorry, even further. The chart, there you go. So does that mean between 2026 and 2032, the cost is 39 million?
No, those are annual
That's
costs.
annual cost.
Those are the annual costs.
Yeah, because the 222% would be on the other end. And
Okay.
a
Glad we
large,
clarified that.
and I would say, traffic certainly is important, public safety, but the traffic cameras is going to have a significant hit to district court.
Yeah.
Significant.
And
so thank you. Let me just interrupt for a second. Thank you for mentioning that, because that was the other words out of my mouth that I was trying to ask the briefers today, because I have seen cameras become extremely controversial with the local public. And I don't know where that sits. I mean, there were some cities that, they're tired of red light runners. They put up the cameras, and then they ended up, after great expense, taking them down because they had so much recoil by the public, Big Brother, invasion of privacy. That wasn't me driving. You didn't really get, it really was a debacle. I've kind of lost sight of that national discussion. I mean, these cameras have been around a long time. When I lived in Germany in the 80s, you could be driving down the road and see a flash, and you just got a speeding ticket. They're there. They're very effective, and I'm tired of watching people run red lights here in Vancouver. But what is the status of that in Washington State? Are they going to happen? Are people accepting them?
So in the research that we've done, Chair, that Washington State is moving forward with a lot of areas have cameras. To our south, City of Portland had them when I was there. They've had them for over 20 years. City of Beaverton has them. In the data that Administrator Farrell will be presenting next week at the work session for district court, they compared a lot of it to City of Beaverton because it's a similar municipal, what the impact will be for district court if the cameras go through. I think City of Vancouver was projecting, I think, 13 violations a month per camera, which is extremely on the low side compared to City of Beaverton, which is about 75, I believe. So when they took that into account when they were looking at the violation numbers, I will just say, coming from that side of things, in the state of Washington, violations have to be settled by a commissioner or a judicial officer. And in Oregon, it's different. It can be done at the clerk level based on the driving record. So we have a lot of added expense in settling those matters because each of them can be contested in the state of Washington. So it's a large volume that will go through the courts.
So how many cameras are anticipated for Vancouver, and are we capturing that additional
That's
workload?
part of the increases, yes, that you see.
Yes.
Yes.
Kind of a mid-level estimate
Yes.
forecast?
And Mark can touch on what Brian will present next week.
Chair, let me try and give you a summary of what's included in these numbers. So the impact we're trying to anticipate is what we know Vancouver has suggested based on their proposition, the 69 officers, plus they're going to have some other
And sheriff's
support.
office as well.
I'm getting to that. In addition to VPD, this is also trying to anticipate. In the past, we've looked like at a 20, 30, 40 scenario of increased positions. This would maximize at the 40 officer position. That's what we're trying to gauge for. So those are the two two scenarios that we're trying to incorporate in the downstream impact. These particular numbers that you see here they don't include everything yet. I just got the district court impact of the CCSO numbers this morning, and so they're not included in here, although this does include district court for Vancouver. It includes the clerk's office. It includes the superior and district courts. And again, these are operational costs only. As was mentioned, it does not include capital or facility costs that we would have to do, that we would have to adjust for increased personnel. I know we're addressing some of these things like the jail, we're addressing district court, but there are other changes that'll have to be made as we go through and add personnel to those staffs. Okay. It does include the impact of salary and benefits, so operational costs plus the cost for services. So each of these departments require services that they don't provide themselves through their own personnel. So it includes the cost of those supplies and services. It includes the cost that the county has to do to support these additions, which I call indirect costs or internal services. So that includes IT, HR, finance. This is all included in there. So I'm trying to roll up into one number. What's our total cost? And that's what this represents right now, with some adjustments to come. Like I said, there's a few things that aren't in here yet. In addition to this, the startup costs for each year, when we hire someone, we have to have a startup cost. We have to provide them with a computer, with a chair, or those types of things. I would suggest that each year we have to look at an additional $150,000 for startup costs. That's not included in the ongoing operations. So that would be unique. It's just like, if we hire an officer, we have to outfit them, right? Well, if we hire a clerk over at the clerk's office, they have to have tools. And so that's not included in this yet. And looking at that right now, it's going to be between $100,000 and $150,000 a year, just the startup costs. So
Let me ask about a timeline, because it sounds like we still have a general consensus with some wordsmithing to vote at some point soon on a resolution. When would we do that? How will you get Councilor Marshall's edits?
Yeah.
And anyone else that has edits?
Yes, so that's one of my questions. So one thing to keep in mind, ballots are being mailed today. And I don't know if council would be comfortable with me working with Councilor Marshall to make some edits that don't change the meeting, but support what everybody has said here and move forward with it like that. Or do you want it coming back to council? If you come back to council, we don't have another meeting until next week.
So I'm, for one, fully trusting of the process and I support the resolution. I'm willing to give a thumb up or vote, but what does the other counselors want to do? Do you want to come back? Do you want to vote today?
I would kind of like to know what anybody who is going to make edits with the county manager is going to make, because
Okay.
I'm not sure that I'd end up supporting it, probably, but I'd like to see them.
I would like to see them as well.
So
Fair enough.
let me ask this question, Councilor Marshall. Do you have any suggested edits right now that you could propose for the rest of the council's consideration? We can always do a special meeting as well with 24 hours notice just to come back and address this as well tomorrow.
I think just clarifying, just what I came up with on the spot here was that increasing one component without considering all of the law and justice components, and then your conclusion here about how the system would not be sustainable. I guess it's just to put a fine point on, you can't just change one thing and hope for the positive results that you're thinking you're going to get. I don't know exactly how that gets worked in. I think it would clarify it a little bit more.
So Karen, as to your comment about timeliness, I mean, obviously, if we have to come back and review it again, it becomes less timely on the issues of the resolution. But it sounds like it would be more prudent, make the changes, and then how much notice do we have to have it on the agenda?
24 hours notice for special meetings. Yeah, okay, 24 hours notice if you want to do a special meeting tomorrow or Friday, just for this specific agenda item. Or it would be next Wednesday.
So Thursday is our Vancouver symposium, Vancouver Lakes symposium for all day. How about Friday? Do you want to come back Friday and to see all the edits and then give a vote on it?
Friday morning would be great.
We'll make whatever we need.
Others?
I have a conflict with Friday morning, but if my small suggestion is creating additional meetings, I think it would make it better, but I'd be willing just to withdraw and have it go as is, unless any other counselor has ideas.
That's very gracious. Karen? Michelle?
Sounds good.
So if those changes were withdrawn, are you prepared to vote today?
Yes, I'm curious what the yellowed
Yes.
wording would be.
Yes, so that is, and I will note, I will change the community to taxpayers. I will make that edit from
Right.
talking about that earlier. But yes, so I did highlight, I'll change the date for today on the adopted, but the whereas with the percentage, that is to capture the estimated cost that Mark had put up as a percentage or dollar amount. And my question to council is how would you like that presented? Do you want it spread out over through 2032, or do you want us to do a cumulative amount or the first year amount, second year amount? Do you have a preference on that?
I would prefer. Go ahead, Karen.
I was going to say, I think it's clearest, particularly given Councillor Young's question, which others would have as well, if you would list it by year and then put a slash year, for the year, so that it was clear that that was the annual expense.
So
And you could put, say, every other year for 6 years or something. I don't know. Or all the years, either way.
Okay, whenever that noise stopped. overwhelm voters or whoever may read the resolution with a lot of data running.
I think might be something for the room. Turn. Okay. We're good.
I just want to be clear, the numbers that you saw, those are preliminary.
Very preliminary.
So I wouldn't recommend putting those into a resolution.
So what
Ju-
what I was going to recommend is just next year impact, which you have a little bit more clarity on.
Sure.
And with the simple statement, these costs are forecast to increase year to year.
I think council would want to be flexible because if they were to hold you to a resolution number, we're not there yet.
Well, we do have approximately.
Yeah.
I mean, and it also says it's going to be refined as additional law enforcement personnel because we don't know. I mean,
That's right.
we know there's going to be an impact, but we're not going to fully see,
Right.
And I also think I should add on there that these costs are not inclusive of capital.
Right.
I think that's important too. But so council's desire on the,
Okay, after that further discussion,
Yeah, just one more comment. So I'm glad that you made that comment at the end there, because I was under the impression that the numbers on the screen were the impact of Vancouver's levy. So I'm glad you clarified that.
it is based on their levy passing and sheriff's
Right.
office. It's our impact to address those.
Right. So having heard that, I'm kind of rereading this a little bit, and I'm a bit concerned that it to me it makes it look like we're saying that this is the impact due to Vancouver's Prop 4. I know the language is in there, but it's not incredibly clear to me that it's inclusive of increasing the sheriff's deputies, because that is, I would like to understand what the impact of Prop 4 is and what the impact of the sheriff's deputies would be. I think it's important
That's
to.
gonna be a lot more work for the Law and Justice Committee, and I don't know, they're not gonna, because they did it in totality. So how they started out their meeting was a meeting with Vancouver and with the sheriff to hear what they were requesting, ask questions so they understood, and now they're applying all of that knowledge. And I did put up one of the whereases that the sheriff's office has expressed a desire. I said that because council hasn't approved it yet. So I don't want to put something out there that says, yes, the sheriff's going to get more deputies, because that hasn't been considered again. It will be
And
next month.
Kathleen, I've seen different numbers for the sheriff's request with quite a range. What number did the Law and Justice Council use?
I used in my analysis the total amount of 40 deputies.
40,
I'm sorry.
okay.
That's what that's what the data, as I was receiving it, they were considering the impacts of 40 deputies. So district court, superior court.
And Mark, this doesn't include the deputies themselves, does it?
Correct. This is just the support, the downstream services that would need to be provided because of the impact of hiring those deputies.
Yeah.
Because these numbers are for the county-wide services, and the sheriff is not a county-wide service.
Correct.
So it doesn't include the costs of the sheriff's personnel or the capital costs. Those are the big ones, maybe?
That is correct. And next week you will see the costing again for the sheriff's office deputies.
I think I would prefer waiting until Friday. I hate having a special meeting, but I need to digest this a little bit further. I think this sends a big statement. I think we need to make sure and get it right.
I feel like I'm agreeing with that as we further discuss this. I have a conflict Friday morning, but I think if we could just get whatever edits we might be suggesting to Kathleen and and leave it to her to do the final drafting and bring it back Friday for a nod.
So honestly, I'm ready to go for today or Friday, but what do the two online counselors want to add to the discussion? What would you like to do? If we have three, we can do it today. Otherwise, it'll be Friday morning at a special meeting.
I'm available Friday morning.
I am too. Well, I've got 2 meetings, but I'll get them changed.
Okay, there we go. So how do we want to reflect the numbers, though? We still didn't really conclude on that. Why don't you give us your best recommendation for Friday, and hopefully we'll have it in writing ahead of the meeting, so we're prepared to vote or ask a final question before
Yeah,
voting.
I can certainly do this. And this document you do have in your emails from last night. We didn't have the numbers yet, which is why I highlighted them on there at the time that this was sent. So Councilor Marshall, is there a time Friday morning that will work for you?
I think I can change what the meeting that I do have 9:30. So I'd say set it whenever it works for
Okay.
everyone else, and
How about 9 o'clock? Does that work for everybody?
Yes.
Yeah, I have a 9:30, so maybe we could make it fast.
Yeah. If you all could have, like I said, any suggested edits or comments to me by midday tomorrow, so I can get those sent out ahead of time as well.
What time did you land on?
9 o'clock. We'll do whatever time works. Does that work? Okay.
Well, I'll probably join online. I do have a doctor's appointment, but it should fit.
Okay. Okay. So we'll get a special meeting notice out for Friday at 9. Okay. And let me know if you have any suggestions or comments, and I can try to incorporate the comments in here as well. But I would like to get this to you guys by mid to late day tomorrow. So at least you have tomorrow night to look at it before the meeting on Friday.
Super. And hopefully some reporter somewhere is lurking and decides this is newsworthy.
Do you
starts
also want
amplifying.
to see like the same information in a press release and op-ed, any of that? I can have that ready as well.
I would.
I think
Let's
that's
do
good.
it. Yes.
Okay. We're on it. We'll get it done. Thank you.
Okay, so are we prepared to move forward to new business?
Yes.
Thanks, Mark. Okay, number 5, new business proclamation 5.1. Jordan?
Good afternoon, Council. For the record, Jordan Bogey, Policy Analyst. So 5.1, this is a proclamation that the Council has done before under a different name. So previously, November was National Runaway Prevention Month. And the National Women's Coalition Against Violence and Exploitation has done a kind of a rebrand of this month into National Youth Hope Month. And so they were hoping that the council would declare a proclamation in support of that, as has been done previously for Runaway Prevention Month. And so present this to the council for any edits or comments, or if you approve, a thumbs up, or if not, a thumbs down today.
I have no edits. I support this. Other comments?
I'm supportive as well.
I support.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, looks like we're good on that one. 5.2, National Caregivers Month.
Yes, so this is another proclamation that the council has done previously as well. So this, again, is related to those who are family caregivers and the desire to support and recognize those who are taking time to care for loved ones. And so, again, I would welcome any comments or thoughts, or otherwise thumbs up or down from the council on this one.
Thumbs up.
Okay, I'm seeing universal thumbs up. Moving on to 5.3, Agricultural Advisory Commission.
Good afternoon, Council. Amber Emery, Deputy County Manager for the record. Happy to present this topic today. I came before you in April. I attached the memo to the council meeting of what we discussed back in April when we were proposing this advisory commission to be established. Just a little bit more, just to go back a little bit in the background, 7 counties have advisory commissions for agricultural, King, Pierce, San Juan, Skagit, Snohomish, Thurston, and Whatcom. And that's what we looked at to put the ordinance and the exhibit that you have before you today for consideration to bring this commission to life. So that's the background that we had in April. So we have drafted the ordinance for the Agricultural Advisory Commission. Of course, this will come back for a public hearing. We're just getting council's feedback on the attachment as well as the ordinance today. We received a lot of letters from folks in the farming community on this particular topic of suggestions on the makeup. So I'm asking council, is there any edits or suggestions you would have for the makeup of the body?
Any edits?
Nope.
I have, I think maybe just one edit, and that came from the conservation a couple from the conservation district. They're listed under membership, one member from the Clark County Conservation District. They don't use county in their title, so I would just, that's a small edit. And I think we could just leave it a member from the Conservation District. The suggestion was that the executive director serve as the member, but I think they could easily select among themselves who should be that representative. And then also there was a suggestion of inclusion of the Cowlitz tribe, which I think is a good idea as well. There were comments related to climate change, and I think without spelling out a lot of detail about or directives to the advisory body, there's nothing that would prevent them from addressing impacts of climate change or how farms can serve as carbon sinks or whatever. So I don't feel a need to spell that out specifically. Yeah, so I think just those small changes.
Okay.
Well, if I synthesize that properly, I have no objection to taking out the word county on the conservation district, and it doesn't sound like we really needed any other change.
Just the Cowlitz, right? And is council in agreement with that?
I'm in favor of adding a Cowlitz representative.
Well,
Yes.
just the district board, so if we just eliminate board as well, and then the district could select whoever they like.
I'm okay with that.
So just to confirm, Clark Conservation District is what we're asking for 1A, for the A, right? Okay.
Other concurrence, other edits?
Yeah.
What?
The one thing I would like to have a little bit of time, maybe thoughtful process on this, and it should be included. I mean, you kind of mentioned other potential boards and stuff, but I think that what I see this board being is filling a really important gap in the overall recommendation that comes to us. And so I would like them to have some, I don't know exactly how we do that, but I want them to present to the Planning Commission in some formal way. I want them to advise the Planning Commission so that early in the process, that information can get incorporated. What I don't want to end up with is one recommendation from the Planning Commission and then a totally different recommendation from this advisory board. I want them to mesh together so that they can understand the different perspectives, and hopefully between the two of them can bring one policy forward.
And I think, Councilor Young, we have that laid out, I think, pretty strategically in the document of saying where this body, most of the agricultural commissions throughout the state lie with the community planning, community development departments for that particular reason, for it coming through the planning commission, then up to council. So we do have that listed. I will say too, community planning will, if this is approved by council goes forward and into the public hearing and approved, this will live in planning, community planning. So that's where this particular commission would land. Jordan is going to help in the interim get this off the ground if it's approved, and we'll get the establishment of it. But that's going to be where the advice will come up through, and then also to council, because it'll serve both ways. I don't know if
I just think we could benefit from the one paragraph that says, make recommendations to the council, it says recommendations to the county manager and other boards. But I think that it's deserving of having an actual specified the planning commission in there.
which section are you on, the ordinance?
I don't need.
Will you tell me which section you're on?
That's the, this one.
You're
right
on the
here.
exhibit. Okay.
Yeah. It just says right there in the third code, it says the Agriculture Advisory Commission shall advise and make policy recommendations to the council and county manager or other appropriate boards and commissions. I'm okay with other appropriate boards and commissions, but I think it should be memorialized that the planning commission specifically.
I think that's a good suggestion.
Does council want it called out right there specifically with the bullet points? We have that laid out, but do you want that called out specifically in that section?
It's fine, I think.
Okay.
So hearing no objection to that, I support it as well.
Okay. Added. Yeah, this will be, so the yellow highlights, I know Councilor Bowen's going to ask me that eventually, where it's going to go in the yellow highlights. So that will be entitled to code. And so that's where I've left that open for now, so that when it comes back to the public hearing, after we work with the legal partners and also planning, where that will be listed for the public hearing, we'll have that all filled in. So I just wanted to make sure I called that out to council, that's why that's highlighted with the C, so that will be in code.
So this is one of those proposals where, unless I missed it, I saw no objection to it. I mean, this is a good news story. It'll be very beneficial to the county in making decisions. Does everyone favor these changes so we can move forward with this?
Yes, I just have a question. Is
Go
our
ahead.
thumbs up for both the code and the ordinance?
Yes, and then I'll be bringing that forward to a public hearing.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily a yes for the code. If the ordinance is approved at a public hearing, that will then become code.
Correct, yes.
Gotcha.
Okay.
And not
so-
for that letter.
I'm sorry, what was the last question?
And not for that memo, I should say, that was attached.
Correct, that was just the background. You're talking about the memo from April? Yes, Councilor Bowen, that's just background where we came from when I presented this in April.
Great.
Correct, yes.
Okay, so I hear a thumbs and see a thumbs up from Karen. I'm giving one.
Okay,
It looks
great.
universal. Perfect.
I'll help
Super,
you
great.
bringing it
Thanks
back
for
to
all
a
the
public
work.
hearing. Thank you.
If I could just, I'd like to thank Amber for shepherding this along, and actually the health department for their early on research into who does what around the state. It was really helpful.
And the positive public comment as well. I would thank everyone out in the community. Everyone supports this. Councilor reports. None? Work session. I'm
Oh.
sorry, Glenn, did you have one?
I'm sure Jordan will update us on the Mental Health Sales Tax Advisory Board, so I'll let him do that.
Okay, so work session requests.
None today.
Jordan, you're on. Policy updates.
All right. Good afternoon, Council. Again, for the record, Jordan Bogey, Policy Analyst. I have 4 updates for you today. And so the first one that I'd like to bring forward is a request that just came in yesterday, I believe. And this is from the Clark Regional Wastewater District. They are, and Rebecca, if you can go to page 3 of this file. Thank you. They are hoping, so the folks in this blue area shown, this annexation area just south of Northeast 119th Street, just right kind of on the cross section of Northeast 94th Avenue, they are interested in becoming annexed into the existing sewer system. Right now, that area is on a well, and so part of the wastewater district's goal is to build up the infrastructure in the county, get more folks off of wells and into the larger wastewater collection system in the area. Per RCW, the county legislative authority has jurisdiction over these kinds of annexations. And so the decision point today would be to either approve this annexation, which the Clark Regional Wastewater District's board has already approved, and the folks who are living there have asked for this, or if you would like, and if you choose to go that route, there will be a staff report, and it will be on an upcoming council meeting. If council would like instead, we can have a full hearing on this annexation. And so that's the decision point in front of council. I'm happy to provide some more information if you'd like. So I'll take any questions or comments, or if council has a sense of how they'd like to proceed on this.
One quick question. Do they have a timeline deadline that they have to have it done if this moves forward?
So I believe it is a 30-day deadline. I'm not exactly sure. The letter that I have is dated September 20th, but I only saw this a few days ago, so I'm not sure of the exact timing of this. Ken may be able to help me out on this piece here.
Oh, maybe this was on. Thanks, Jordan. I want to thank Jordan for getting this before you. I received the letter a couple weeks ago, and we had some internal confusion about where and how to route this, because we used to be in charge of wastewater at Salmon Creek Treatment Plant. Now that falls on the Discovery Alliance, the Clean Water Alliance, and is run by Clark Regional. So I think there's a 30-day timer on the request from the district, and I believe that that obviously puts us in a situation if we do go to public hearing that we're not going to meet the timeline, and I don't know what that means legally for the district and their request. Maybe Leslie can speak to that. So.
Thank you, Ken. What I was going to say is it would require public hearing for the annexation, so public hearing would be required.
Okay, and in speaking with the district, that was not my understanding, that we either had an option for council to approve or to take it to public hearing per the RCW. So maybe
I'd have to take a look at the RCW to make sure.
Okay.
So my question would be, why wouldn't we do this? I mean, what's the downside here from a public works perspective or any other aspect? What's the second or third order impact?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think the only concern for us, and I talked to Oliver about this, was whether or not this is an annexation of a service district for Clark Regional, for them to basically collect their SDCs for the area and service these new customers. If this area were not in the UGA, then that would present a concern for us as far as planning, but it's right there on the edge. We confirmed that, and I spoke with Oliver about it. So neither Public Works nor community planning has concerns as far as the annexation, and we would recommend and support it.
Other concerns or questions?
Yeah, you just answered my question, and I'm fully supportive of this. I was curious when this came into the growth boundary, if this was something recent or.
When the area came into the UGA?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. We could find out.
But it is within the UGA.
It is. It's right there on the edge.
I would just say the wastewater district they just quietly go about their business very, very well and address wherever the growth boundary is expanding out. So if there's a way for this to move forward without the need for a public hearing, Leslie's shaking her head.
I'm looking at the statute right now. This is RCW 5204-041. And what it says is that if this is basically a petition for the annexation is filed with the Board of Commissioners, If it complies with the requirements of the law, the board may accept the petition and then fix a date for public hearing and publish notice of the hearing. So it sounds like maybe there's some confusion that they can accept the petition, but this, at least this particular statute says it has to be a public noticed hearing.
And Leslie, is that referring to the board as the district or the legislative body for council to accept? And that's the part that I'm not clear on. So
This is
Okay,
under the
I
check.
prefer not to have this discussion
Yeah.
now. I think it sounds like there needs to be some further research, but I support doing it. Can we at least sense that on the other counselors? Okay, Michelle, okay,
So I'm supportive of moving forward from what I heard there, like accepting their petition. This would have impact, and I would want to be able to hear from the people that are impacted before we make that decision. So I would need a public hearing. It sounds like we need it anyway, but just want to make sure.
Or it will come back to council on a Tuesday meeting and somebody can provide public testimony on the staff report if it's not a public hearing.
all right, well, let's figure out what the law requires, but you have a general support here to make it happen. So
And if it could move forward quickly, I'd appreciate that.
yeah, and my apologies for the internal delay that we've had to this point. I don't know that we ever had a timeline where we could have noticed it for public hearing in time, but we'll determine what's next and let you know.
other brief policy updates.
So the next item I have is related to the desire for council to send a letter to the state Supreme Court related to the proposed indigent defense caseload standards. And so I have a letter drafted currently. And so I have gotten a couple of comments from counselors, from the chair in particular. He had asked if I would add in some information about potentially asking the state to, as part of these standards, in addition to the funding and the delay, which the letter requests, these standards not be implemented until such time that the state provides funding and support for local governments and court systems to be able to handle these pieces. The chair had also asked if I would add in a portion asking the Supreme Court to consider requiring some skin in the game for local attorneys. So that would be maybe requiring some amount of pro bono work, or basically the model that exists in other states where they help supplement some of their public defense needs in the community through other lawyers. And so I was going to add that piece in, and then anything else that council wants. We do have a little bit of time on this. The letter is due by the 31st of this month. And so we have a few weeks if I need to go back and do any more edits, but I would welcome any thoughts from council on the proposed letter.
So just to explain that, I had at all times hit on this topic, especially since most of the inertia for this going to the Supreme Court came from the Bar Association. The first state bar membership I ever had was in New Jersey many years ago. But they had a requirement of all lawyers to take a certain number of court cases pro bono. And that usually fell in the criminal court. Everyone expected to do it. Everyone did it. And it helped alleviate the needs that we're seeing now. Other states do have similar measures. They have different strategies for it, but there's mechanisms for the bar itself to have a requirement to provide a certain number of hours per year pro bono, whether it's specific to the criminal courts or not. So anyway, I just wanted to tee that up so at least someone is talking about it, because other states see some relief in that. It is one part of a solution.
I would support that. I assumed that there was some requirement for pro bono services, so didn't know that.
So is there a third person in support of adding that to the letter? Okay, other thumbs, universal.
Perfect. Thank you, Council. I will add that in, and then I'll present a final version of the letter to Council next week at Council time.
A very good letter. Thank you for putting that together.
Thank you. Two final updates, and they are faster. The first one is related to broadband. So the BEAD program, the federal government is getting ready to send $1.2 billion to the state of Washington for broadband deployment. The State Department of Commerce has, as of last Friday, completed their area maps. And so there are 8 or 9 regions across Clark County that internet service providers will be able to, hopefully soon, bid on. And based on the results of those bids, contracts will be awarded for internet service providers to begin deploying fiber in various parts of the county. And there is a website that you can go to. I emailed that to all of you, and I'm going to be updating the BEAD page on the council page for the public. That should be updated in the next day or two with that link as well, so folks will be able to come and see that for themselves. So that's the first update. And then the second and final thing is related to what Councilor Young was saying. The Mental Health Sales Tax Advisory Board met last week to finalize their recommendations for external programs. There were, I believe, 14 different programs funded through the recommended for funding from the Mental Health Sales Tax Advisory Board. A lot of really, really great applications. And so we're getting that information out to those who were awarded, and we'll be getting them out to those who were not selected. And so that process is ongoing, but I would say that it was I appreciate the time. It's a big time commitment, both for the counselors on the board as well as all the other members. And so I just really appreciate all the time that they took to review a lot of applications and make some challenging decisions, because we had a lot of really good applications. So there's going to be some more detail to come on that, but I'm still getting out some of the information to those who were not awarded. So I'll wait to say more publicly at this point as we go through the process.
I just want to add a comment on the broadband, because this has been years in the making, and never would I have thought it was going to take this long, but it is a lot of money. And we were first looking at about 700 million for the state, and then it did make a jump to 1.2 billion. It's been a long process, and your predecessor helped me start that process. We got the ball rolling. We were among the very first counties to make connections with Washington State Extension that had the ball for the state on behalf of Commerce. It's been a long, long process. And then Amber took it over, and then you took it over, as well as putting together kind of an A-team, if you will, from our county to really address this very complicated bureaucratic mapping process. And there was good cause. I'm not criticizing it. They didn't want to squander the money. They didn't want to duplicate services. And I also want to compliment the service providers. So as competitive as this is, they took a pretty collaborative approach to these meetings and were very cooperative, including our utilities that we tried to convince to take more of a leadership role. They just didn't see it in our portfolio, but they were very cooperative in helping us with the mapping issues. So anyway, I look forward to the end result. The maps are looking okay for Clark County. I think we're going to get our just due. I think it will be an equitable distribution of this money across the state, which was the biggest fear, because there were grants going to particular counties and others were lacking. We were lacking. We didn't know why, but hopefully all that will be reversed. So thanks for all the hard work you've done, and Amber particularly, and your team for marshaling this along through the last couple of years.
Chair, just one thing I'd like to add then, Jordan, I want to say thanks to Jordan for taking this on and now spearheading this effort. We do have an internal group that Jordan has started, that we just actually had a conversation yesterday. Pierce County looks at this as part of the community planning and comp plan piece of looking at infrastructure. So we have started to explore that with Oliver's team, as well as utilities, how the permitting's done through that, and April's team. So Jordan has put a group together. We met yesterday, and we'll bring that back to council as soon as we get a little bit more information on how we can address it from that side of things, since we're not going to be an ISP.
Great. I like that quite a bit. One site-specific concern is Larch Mountain, because it's kind of out there by itself. Future uses of Larch Mountain, it'd be good to have connection. And so I don't know what the odds are of service being out there or when that might occur, but there's a committee working on it, and they'd like to know too.
Chair, I have a comment on the mental health sales tax.
Please go ahead.
I mentioned this to Jordan in private also, but wanted to make it public as well. There was quite a bit of funding devoted to providing a consultant for the entities that wanted to apply for mental health sales tax, but needed some consultation in order to have really good proposal. So I'm interested in what number of organizations took advantage of that, and how much of that funding was actually spent in the end for that procedure. And was it those who were successful, the 14 who were successful, who utilized the consultant, or did it go a different way? So if we could have a little follow-up on that at some point, Jordan, that'd be terrific.
Counselor, yes, happy to provide that follow-up. I did get some information that there were 7 organizations that took advantage of the program, but I have not gotten the details on how much or who those programs are yet. So I will follow up and bring that back to council.
I'm frankly surprised it was so few. That's very interesting. Thank you.
Mission complete for policy. Okay, so we do have 2 remaining executive sessions. One is potential litigation, 42.30.110, paren 1, paren little I for 10 minutes. Hope springs eternal. And 9.2 RCW 4230.110, paren 1, paren little g, 5 minutes with potential after action. So that's about 15 minutes. Does everyone need a 2 or 3 minute break until we start? I'm seeing positive head nod. So let's take a 5-minute break, go into executive session. We'll be online, and then we'll come back at 10 minutes after the hour of 3. Hopefully. Okay, we'll be in recess right now. Go ahead and take a break. We'll see you in 5. Now, can you hear us, Michelle? Okay, we have a quorum. We did meet with our lawyers in executive session. There is no action to take today, so we do stand adjourned.